Welcome to the Cheer Athlete. This week we're going to talk about proper warm-ups and when is a good time for cheerleaders to be more independent in their warm-ups. Welcome to the Cheer Athlete podcast, where we bring coaches, parents, and athletes expert tips and advice to help keep cheerleaders healthy, strong, and at the top of their game. Now let's go. This was a great question I saw on one of the cheer mom groups, and I think I think it's important to address because there is an age when they should be a little bit more independent and paying attention and learning how to do them, but they're not necessarily always. They don't know what to do, and so how do we give them guidance, and how do we help them to learn? So if you don't know me, I'm Laura Turner. I am the cheer PT, and we talk on this podcast all things about cheer to help keep your athletes safe and healthy and reduce risk of injury. And so thank you very much for joining me. Please, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and share this with someone who might benefit from hearing, and learning more about warm-ups and injury prevention. It's my goal to help keep your cheerleaders safe and on the mat for as long as they want to stay on the mat and to be happy in the process. And the more people that hear about different ways to help keep them safe, the better our sport is going to be. So I just had a good question from another client of mine. Sometimes you give me a stretch, and sometimes you give me an exercise that makes me move in and out instead of just holding the stretch. And she asked what the difference was. So the one that you're holding, we call it a static stretch. You're holding it for a set amount of time, for about 30 seconds. The one that you're moving in and out of, we call that dynamic mobility, dynamic warm up, or mobility work. And both are good to do. Typically, we don't like to see stretching before a workout because some research has shown that it can inhibit a muscle and inhibit and make things weaker, so that if, for instance, in the aspect of cheerleading, we're going to, our typical warm-up is sit and stretch, and then we do a straddle stretch, and then we go do jumps. Well, that's actually going to inhibit those hamstrings and make the landing that much harder, so you're more at risk of destabilizing the knee or not having as much power to get your jump as high. Doing a dynamic warm-up where you're moving through a full range of motion can help you to both lengthen the muscle, get the body primed and warmed up and ready to go, and create stability in and around the joint. The way I've been trained is, and the way I've been trained as a strength coach is really like people come in early, and this would be ideal that the cheerleaders will come in about 10 to 15 minutes early and do their own independent stretching. Maybe they do some foam rolling, then they hold a static stretch, and they do their straddle stretches, and then they do their dynamic warm up, and then they get into their workout. And so their workout might be lifting that day, or it might be actual practice. And then at the end of their practice is when they're going to static stretch and hold the stretches again. I think that's a lot. And as a physical therapist, I don't think there's any need to do static stretching prior to the dynamic warm up. I think the dynamic warm up is really what's going to get them ready to go. And that's if I could say that there's one thing missing from, or that's one thing that is missing from every client that I see in the clinic, is they're not doing a proper warm up. They kind of get there, they stretch for a little bit, and then they just get on their way and go. Now, this doesn't mean that a warm up has to take you, 25 to 30 minutes. It should take you 10 to 15 minutes max. Sometimes if you're running late, you can get a good warm up in 5 minutes. It kind of depends on the day. I program warm ups to, I like methodical, and this is not end all be all. This I think you can do in any, but I like to balance things. So if I'm loosening up the front of the thigh and the quads, then I want to strengthen either the hamstrings or the glutes. If I'm stretching my lower back, I want to strengthen my abdominals and my core. If I'm stretching my hip external rotators, I want to strengthen my hip internal rotators, and both vice versa. And I personally like to start lying down and work my way up onto hands and knees, and then onto one leg, and then up into standing and doing more dynamic that way. That's how I like to program. It again, that part's not the end all be all. I do think it's important to balance and create the stretch with the stability, but you can justify, starting standing up and ending lying down and then come back up into standing. I just think it flows better. Personal opinion on that one. So what I like to see in is including all three of those motions. And there should be a variety. We want to get the hamstrings to be moving through their full range. So something like holding a strap around the ball of your foot and raising your leg straight up, and then raising your opposite leg up and down. So we are stretching the leg that's up in the air, the left leg, we're stretching that one, and then raising the right leg up and down. Really important to keep both knees straight on this. So we are getting a good effective stretch on the one leg while activation on the opposite leg. That exercise is actually a core exercise to kind of cover all aspects. I love that exercise as part of a warm up, and I think it's important for all flyers to do on a regular basis. Another one I really like, maybe doing a bretzel where you're lying on your side, pulling your knee across your body, and then grabbing your bottom foot to stretch the quad on the bottom foot. All these exercises are on my channel. You can find them anywhere. If you look up, stretch the front of the thigh, or, improve the bretzel, I think is great for improving back stunts, and hamstring was going to be good for pulling heel stretches. Both are important for both, but when you are logging them as an exercise in on the videos, they could be, they're going to talk to one specific. So the bretzel, you lie on your right side, you pull your right foot to your butt, and you have your left knee across, and then you rotate back onto your back and coming back. I'll follow that with a single leg bridge to really, you stretch the front of the thigh and open up the rotation, and then you get into a single leg bridge where you're creating power and strength through the glutes. Another key exercise that I love, instead of doing like a static straddle stretch, is to be on hands and knees and put one leg out to the side and really push your pinky toe into the floor, and then rocking back and forth, kind of like a baby when they're learning how to crawl. That really gets the inner thigh a lot, and it really does a great job at kind of allowing that to open, as well as creating some stability in the opposite hip, or on the outside of the hip. So you get, again, that balance between the two. You can then take it from there and come up onto one knee and maybe hold for a few seconds, then do some split squats, maybe then get up into doing some Frankenstein walks. So split squats are going to warm up the front of the leg and your glutes. A Frankenstein walk is when you're walking and kicking, and then maybe some skipping. So you're getting some dynamics, some crossbody, you're kind of connecting the brain, you're getting coordination, and then they should be ready to go. And then get into their jump practice or their tumble practice or whatever they're going to be working on. Probably good to throw in some upper body work in there too, which that can be a variety. As you're doing the bretzel, you're getting your upper back moving, so it's really going to help the shoulders. In a half kneeling lunge, you could do a reach to come to the side. Again, it's going to stretch the side of the body and your arms. There's not a set exercise that is, you absolutely have to do this. I think some are better than others, but most important, I think it's, we need to create a variety in the routine. And you could be spending all day, every day doing the same thing. We need to have those three planes of motion that I talk about all the time: the forward and back, the side to side, and a rotational motion. So doing things to help the hip rotators, the shoulder rotators, the trunk rotators, things that, you're moving side to side, things that maybe not in our everyday cheer practice, training our bodies to move in those so that it's easier in our cheer practice. There, again, ton of variety that you can do. Just pick 5 to 6 and build on it from there. So along with these stretches, I have a number of warm-ups on my YouTube channel that you can find, and just put in warm up, cheerleading warm up, and you should be able to find that. And they might be a little bit long. They're generally about 7 minutes. but sometimes I talk in them and I tend to ramble, so they go a little long. I'm putting together a program and giving, putting together a bunch of different warm up exercises and warm up routines that cheerleaders can just take, print out, and take with them. So if you're interested in that, please reach out, let me know, and that will be available shortly. I'm just kind of putting those finishing pieces together. Um, I'm sitting at my desk. I moved my computer back today, so if you're noticing a little difference, I have my little fidget things to fidget with. That's put them down and focus. Dynamic warm-ups are really important. I'm going to do a series on these, and we'll talk more and more, and I'll talk about different exercises that you can incorporate at the same time. I talked at the beginning, when is it okay for kids to, start to do this on their own, and should coaches be doing this? I think it depends on the team, and I think it depends on the maturity of the individual kids. I don't, I think it's good when teams can warm up together because that connects them, it pulls them in together, it gets them ready to work together as a team. Some of you might think, okay, we can, uh, cheerleader A and cheerleader B are doing two different workouts, but they're both working warm-ups on their own, and then we're going to come together after that to get ready. I think it depends on your team. I have, I've not really worked with youth athletes, so I do think there's a level of distraction that happens, and there may not be as focused, but there are some 11-year-olds that are like, oh no, I'm good. I'm gonna get in here and start my warm up the way I know it. Once they know the routine and they know what they need to do, they jump right at it. And I've had some college age kids that are kind of like they get to practice and they're like, I give them a handed warm up and they say, oh, I just was gonna stretch. I thought that was my warm up. And that's bad communication on my end. I take ownership for that. But once they know what to do, are once they are focused on that and they know they're going to get there and come in and run through their warm up and they need to be there 10 minutes early so that they start practice on time, it all will flow. So it depends on the maturity level of your athletes, and it depends on what the timing of everything is and if you're going to try and get everything together. Captains are a great way to encourage them to work together as a team. They can lead warm-ups. Doesn't have to be, maybe there's another leader on the team that's not necessarily a captain that can take leadership in this. So the key for you, if you're listening to this, if you're a cheerleader, be the leader. Start to teach your teammates what it's like to move throughout full ranges of motion, and show them how to do it. If you need more information, go look up my videos. I'll leave a link to some of the exercises in here as well. Ask your parents. Look in my program. That can help you, and you can just take it and be like, okay, this is what we're going to do, guys. Once you get the flow of it, it's going to be easy. Parents, look up other information. Give them stuff to be able to go, and maybe I don't think it's really the parents' job to run the warm up. I would rather see this be on the coaches. Yes, parents teaching their kids that they need to do a dynamic warm up versus a static stretch. That could be helpful because then they have buy-in when they get to practice. But I do agree it should be the coach's job per se to make sure that your athletes are ready to go and warmed up. Yes, we want to make sure they're independent. Yes, they need to take ownership, and yes, you have something right before and don't always have the time, but this is a part of coaching, right? We need to take that time, and unless they're mature enough and know what to do, it's on you as a coach to do the work. This is coming from a former coach. I coached for 13 years, and when I didn't take ownership for it, I saw injuries happen, and when I did, better things happened. So take it with a grain of salt. Do what you feel is best, and make sure they know what they're doing. If you have any questions, please reach out. I have a form down below, Ask a PT, so I would love to answer your questions. If there's more things that you would like to talk about, if there's a specific about warm-ups that you'd like to know. As I said in the beginning, I think the biggest missing piece and the biggest risk for an injury is not having a proper warm-up. If we're static stretching at the beginning, we are setting ourselves up to not have the muscles like stabilized. Number one, it puts us at bigger risk of hyperextending our knees. When we do a proper warm up, we get things primed and ready. It trains our nervous system. It gets us focused. It gets the blood flow going. It creates mobility and stability all around so that your joints are safer. And there's just less of a risk of injury and overuse because of that. So I think if there's one thing that cheerleaders can add into their workouts, it's a nice dynamic warm up. And this will help build, like, if you're working out, your warm up is part of your exercise, it's part of your routine. And so it's going to actually count towards your exercise for the day. And that helps to, it just builds and it helps to build strength. Research long ago showed that, getting teenage girls to do, I think they were soccer players, to do a good solid warm up that included loading the joints and loading the muscles and moving through full ranges of motion, they had less ACL injuries. I mean, yeah, it's old research, but that hasn't changed. So let's get them doing some good solid warm-ups and keep them strong. It's going to improve flexibility for your flyers. It's going to reduce the risk of injuries for all of them. You can give them independence as they keep going forward, and just keep training them as when they need it. That's what's going to help to keep them moving forward. I hope you have a great week. Again, if you have questions, you want to ask a PT, you can fill out that form below, and I will be back next week to talk more on warm-ups, and we got some basic exercises, talk a little bit more about the dynamic and the jumping stuff and as we go through next week. All right, have a great week. Don't forget, when in doubt, breathe out. Take life one step at a time. You can do anything you put your mind to. And as my friend Drew Keller said, you're responsible for your own vibes. Let's go get the day.